Ooh. Okay. My friends, now after a 14-day hiatus, 2 weeks ago, let's catch up on where we are regarding the Apostle Peter and that Roman centurion by the name of Cornelius from that Italian cohort. Remember, though, Peter is Jewish. He's a Jew, okay? He is a follower of Jesus Christ, the risen one. Cornelius is a Gentile pagan who is open to the Jewish, and I'm going to say Jewish philosophy. There may be other ways to express it, but there were pagans back at that time that were finding Judaism, that ethical monotheism, alluring in a good sense. And they wanted to hear more about it, and then they actually started attending synagogues. Okay, this monotheism. Well, these people that were the pagans, the Gentiles, they became known among the Jewish circles as sojourners, like they're journeying with them, okay? But in the New Testament, we find that they're called these like Cornelius, the pagan, they are called God-fearers. God-fearers. Again, keep in mind the singular God, not gods, but God-fearers. That's happening in the early developing Christian church. Now, just prior to what I'm about to share with you in the text this morning from Acts, which I read the whole text 2 weeks ago, this pagan God-fearer is in Caesarea. That's in Israel, okay, on basically the shore, okay, of the Mediterranean. Turns out he's a good man. This centurion giving a lot of help to the poor, praying to God. Notice he's praying to God. Doesn't say to gods. Implied here is Cornelius has adopted this monotheistic, ethical faith tradition. He's in the process of doing so. Keep in mind, that was very, very different from where he was coming from culturally. He was, we could say, partway inside the Jewish tent, but not quite there. He wasn't quite ready for the cutting-edge move. Such was the case for many interested pagans, primarily if they were male. Anybody getting that one? I'll tell you later. Cornelius was praying, we know. He has a vision. A messenger, an angel tells him to expect a surprising visitor. Now, it doesn't say surprising there, but it would have been, to his mind, the visitor's name, Peter, and the location where he's coming from, Joppa, okay, would have certainly set the ethnic background of the visitor that's going to be coming to see him. He would have known right off the bat, this fellow's Jewish, and he's coming to see me. That would not have been a normal visit for a Gentile, okay? Cornelius sets the plan in motion in getting this fellow there. Off go the emissaries to escort Peter to Cornelius' home. Now, in another part of Israel, while this is happening, Peter is having his own vision. And that vision would have been very disturbing, surprising. Since he rehearses the story to Cornelius when they meet, we'll hear again in the text about that this morning. So here we go. Okay, here we go. Things are in motion. And Peter went down to the men and said, those were the ones coming in to pick him up, to say, hey, we want you to come on over to Caesarea. I am the one you are looking for. What is the reason you are coming? Asks Peter. And they said, Cornelius, a centurion, an upright and God-fearing man, okay, who is well spoken of by the whole Jewish nation, Jewish people. A little hyperbole there. was directed by a holy angel, a messenger, to send for you to come to his house and to hear what you have to say. So he called them in, Peter, to be his guests. Again, unheard of at that time. The next day, he rose and went off with them, and some of the brethren from Joppa accompanied him. So there were other Jewish early Christian followers going along. And on the following day, they entered Caesarea. Cornelius was expecting them, he'd sent for them, and had called together his kinsmen and close friends. In other words, Cornelius wasn't alone. He wanted other people there to experience this Peter fella being in his home and having something to say. When Peter entered, Cornelius met him and fell down at his feet and worshiped him. But Peter lifted him up, saying, "Stand up, I too am a man." And as he talked with him, he went in and found many persons gathered. And he said to them, this is Peter. He's looking at these folks, they're not quite the folks he's normally with, okay? He says to them, "You yourselves know how unlawful it is for a Jew to associate with or to visit anyone of another nation, another ethnos, another people. But God has shown me that I should not call any man common or unclean." That was that earlier part of the story from 2 weeks ago. "So when I was sent for, I came without objection. I asked then why you sent for me. And Cornelius," okay, he speaks up, "4 days ago, about this hour, I was keeping the 9th hour of prayer in my house, and behold, a man stood before me in bright apparel, saying, 'Cornelius, your prayer has been heard, and your alms have been remembered before God. Send, therefore, to Joppa, and ask for Simon, who is called Peter. He is lodging in the house of Simon a tanner by the seaside.' So I sent to you at once, and you have been kind enough to come." Very friendly. "Now, therefore, we are all here present in the sight of God to hear all you have been commanded by the Lord." And Peter opened his mouth and said, remembering what had happened earlier on, Peter had that vision about the foods, kill and eat, and Peter says, no, nothing, I'm not about to do that, that's unclean stuff. And God says, don't call unclean what I say is fine, okay? So Peter opened his mouth and said, "Truly, I perceive that God shows no partiality, but in every nation anyone who fears him and does what is right is acceptable to him." And he goes on, "You know the word which he sent to Israel, preaching good news of peace by Jesus Christ. He is the Lord of all." Oh, what a statement. Amen. Surprise. Surprise, he, Jesus Christ, from this early Christian material. He is Lord of all. Not just one group or one other group, but of all. A marvelous, marvelous narrative story. If you haven't read it or you're not really that familiar with it, Acts chapter 10, give it a shot. Well, when Cornelius's uber retinue arrives, Peter doesn't hesitate. No more, remember who Peter was, okay? Remember, no more slinking in the corner in fear, no more denying Messiah, no more hiding behind closed and locked doors is this Peter anymore. And off Peter goes with his own posse to meet and talk to a Gentile, an outsider. Did you notice, in preparation for this monumental visit encounter, Cornelius invites family and close friends to the surprise party. He wants other people to know about this. The more the merrier, getting the message out of Jesus Christ to all. Not just, well, I like that person there, I like that group there, or those are, no, to all. Imagine this. Again, you've just heard the story. Peter walks into the home of Cornelius. Cornelius sees him. His eyes fix on Peter. And automatically, Cornelius falls to his knees to worship Peter. Don't you just hate that when it happens to you? Well, at least I heard a little bit. Okay. Quickly, Peter corrects the situation. This pagan still has a lot to learn. Remember, there's only one God, and you worship this only one God, none other. That pagan polytheism of gods of every stripe, you know, again, if you were brought up that way, that'd be kind of hard to break. And there are all these different levels of God, so Peter could have been one. I don't know, sometimes we make mistakes ourselves about what we worship. It kind of runs in the human family. Now, here we need to go a bit lightly, if you were paying attention to the reading, okay? Certainly, Jews and Gentiles, pagans, rubbed elbows, okay? Socially, especially out beyond Israel. Even within Israel, with the Roman garrisons, the Roman administrators, and their families over the generations being overlords in Israel, there would have been some form of interaction from little to high degrees between Jews and Gentiles. But it was not the norm, and often it was done with not really feeling good, not good feelings between them. No doubt there was less interaction with Israel and more interaction with the Roman Empire. That's the reason Paul works so well. Paul was a Hellenized Jew. He had lived out there in the Roman world, so he better understood who those others were. He had lived among them. He was familiar with their ways. Peter, though, he was born and bred in Israel. That's pretty much what he knew. Peter here is doing catch-up as a sharer of the gospel of Christ. He too is learning. He's in a learning mode. He's open to surprises. Peter confesses and proclaims to this outsider and those others that were with them in this home. Peter didn't know these people. They weren't friends. They were becoming friends, but he didn't know these people. But he was on a mission, okay? So he begins. He looks at them. He looks around them, you know. Nobody that he recognizes. You yourselves know. He says, he knows they understand. You yourselves know how unlawful it is for a Jew to associate with or to visit any other nation, a people of other nations, people, ethnics. But God has shown me that I should not call anyone common or unclean. This was a major event in the development of our Christian faith, okay? Everyone is included. Those who choose want to be. I'm sure heads were roiling as they heard this jarring yet energizing declaration. Don't call people unclean if God has created them, okay? Peter's vision is unfolding that all that God furnishes, all that God bestows, is worthy and it is not to be considered common or unclean. That's where we are to begin our religious philosophy. All created in the image of God. We go from there. There are some people easier to live with than others. There are some people that choose to be destructive. There's no question about that. But our starting point is, don't call anyone unclean or common. Did you notice also that it took, in the story for Peter, it took this messenger to repeat himself 3 times? 3 times. 3 times. Do you think Peter was having a problem with this surprise? I think so, because it was monumentally 180 degrees different than what he had been taught. He was surprised. Two different worlds were coming together in Israel, within the Roman city of Caesarea. But these two worlds represented what? All of the world. Not just a piece of it, but all of it. And those of us within the Judeo-Christian tradition would say that the germ of that, the beginning of that is found in the Hebrew Scriptures itself. Herein is a universal vision encompassed within the ethical monotheism of the ancient Hebrews, further developing into what became known as Judaism, and then running parallel in this moment in Acts 10 into Christianity. And that is expressing this surprise, this way of life, benefits, fulfills all of our lives, not just a few. So, my friends, when you're taking some time out of your daily routine, your weekly routine, why not meditate, pray, muse, think about meaning, purpose, love. What's life about? Why are we here? When you do that, okay, I hope you do that at some time. You know, if you haven't been doing much of that, I would challenge you to take some quiet time in your own life to think about things of deep importance, not just the mundane, and many of those things are important, but spend some time meditating on your life, the life of your family, life itself. In your quiet time, may I suggest you muse, you pray on this, the Peter and Cornelius surprise. And Peter opened his mouth and said, "Truly I perceive that God shows no partiality, but in every nation, people, anyone who fears, honors, respects God, and does what is right is acceptable to God. You know the word which he sent to Israel, preaching good news of peace by Jesus Christ. He is the Lord of all." Powerful. My friends, perhaps there are yet surprises you may experience in your life through a vision, through a thought, through an encounter that will open relationships and a deeper understanding of your life today in relation to God and the world that you live in. May it be so. Amen.